Right, it's 2 o'clock, so we'll make a start. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's meeting. Just before we do start, I would just like to introduce you to, for members who have not met her, we've got Angelina Lambert, who is our new planning manager, who's taken over from Adrian following his retirement. And then we've also got Catherine Hall, who's representing from Chesterfield Borough Council on the legal side of matters today. So just to introduce you to them both. Right, item 1, apologies for absence. Are there any apologies to be noted?
Unless it's written in Councillor Jones, William Jones, who sends his apologies.
Yeah.
I think he may have written it.
We have, yeah. So as Councillor Baker points out, Councillor Jones, we've also got apologies from Councillor Hancock and Liggett, Chair.
Thank you for that. Right, item 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare on items on the agenda today? No, thank you very much. Item 3, declarations of predetermination. Do any members have a predetermination to declare on any of the applications today? No. Thank you. Item 4 is minutes of the last meeting, which was held on the 23rd of June 2026. Are we happy that they are a correct record?
I'll move them, Chair.
Move second. Everyone happy? Yeah. Thank you. Right, item 5 on the agenda is an update on the 5-year housing land supply position. So I'm now going to hand you over to the Assistant Director of Planning, David Thompson, who's going to run through this report.
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, members. So this report basically sets out the position that as of July, so as of this month, the Council is not able to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. And the report kind of sets out the figures that are involved in that calculation and also the implications for decision making. So briefly in terms of the numbers, so the current local plan target, which remains the target the council needs to be achieving per annum, is 330 dwellings. As of July this year, any local plan across the country that was not examined under the current version of the National Planning Policy Framework, so that is quite a large proportion of the country, basically we had to apply a 20% buffer to our housing target, and with that buffer we are below the 5-year housing land supply figure. So the figure that we have calculated is 4.47 years, and as stated in the report, from November 2026, when the current local plan is 5 years old, the current local plan target of 330 dwellings a year no longer will apply, and the new target, so that is as determined by the standard method for calculating housing need in the current National Planning Policy Framework, so that was introduced at the back end of 2024, that stands at around 590 for this district. So we definitely will have a reduced supply at that point, and at the moment we're calculating that at just short of 3 years as per paragraph 1.5 in the report. So we are in a situation where we can't demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, and the degree of certainty around that from an officer perspective means that we can't really justify trying to defend a position at appeal that we did have a 5-year supply. So it's important obviously that members are aware of that and cognizant of that when making decisions. As officers obviously need to be clear in our recommendations. So moving on to that, in terms of the implications for determining applications, the section 2 of the report sets out those policies relating to the supply of housing that we consider to be out of date. And to be clear, that doesn't mean no weight can ever be given to them, but it means they have reduced weight in the decision-making process. Because in a scenario where you can't demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, what any council is saying in that position is that we don't have a forward plan sufficient to meet our identified need. And so in that situation, policies such as SS1, which defines settlement development limits, and in many of the settlements in the district, will be afforded lower weight in the decision-making process, and the more fundamental concern is what are the sustainability credentials of that actual settlement. So obviously that's a judgment and an assessment done on a case-by-case basis, and officer reports will go through in each circumstance why officers consider a location to be sustainable or not. But the bottom line is now not going to be which side of the line is it on settlement development limit wise. So that's an example. Obviously the other policies are covered in the report. But the long and short of it is where a council can't demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, and that's the position we now find ourselves in accordance with the National Planning Policy Framework, you have to determine applications on the basis of sustainable development as defined at that national level. And what it effectively comes down to is whether any adverse impacts from a development significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. So if we just briefly go back to that settlement development limit example, the fact that a site might abut the wrong side of the line, if you like, from a local plan point of view, where the settlement development limit is drawn, that would count against a proposal, but whether it would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits is really going to come down to what is the sustainability of that actual settlement. So hence my point that it's really a case-by-case basis, but fundamentally the bar for refusing applications has increased in the sense that it's not an automatic refusal now that a site is outside a settlement development limit. I'll probably leave it there, Chair, but I'm happy to answer some questions, mindful of time. Thank you. Yeah.
Right then, members, has anyone got any questions? I'm going to say I'm going to limit it to one question each at this point, because we've got a busy agenda, and I think we can obviously speak to David after the meeting.
Yeah,
and obviously we'll inform us if any members have got any questions on it for today. No, everyone happy to move on? Right, the next item on the agenda is NED stroke 25 stroke 00664 stroke MFL Tupton. This is in respect of land to the northwest of Poplars, Ankerbold Road. So I'm now going to hand you over to the planning manager. Planning manager, over to planning officer.
Thank you, Chair.
So over to you, Phil. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got some technical issues at the moment. I'll start. The application relates to land off Ankerbold Road, Old Tupton. The site benefits from an extant planning permission granted in 2019 for a total of 193 dwellings. The current application seeks permission for a revised layout of Phase 2, resulting in 196 dwellings on that phase and 242 dwellings across the site as a whole. This represents an increase of 49 dwellings compared with the existing permission. The site is allocated for residential development in the adopted local plan and lies within the settlement development limits of Tupton. The application has been accompanied by a viability appraisal. This has been independently reviewed on behalf of the council. That review concludes that the scheme cannot viably support the full policy compliant level of affordable housing and infrastructure contributions. Following negotiation, the recommendation before members secures 20 affordable rented dwellings, together with 784,000 in Section 106 contributions towards education, SEND provision, healthcare, travel plan and highway mitigation, together with a viability review mechanism at 90% completion. The council is currently unable to demonstrate a 5-year supply of housing land, and the delivery of additional housing attracts significant weight in favour of the proposal. Officers conclude that the additional dwellings can be accommodated without giving rise to unacceptable harm, that there are no technical objections from statutory consultees. The recommendation is therefore to grant planning permission subject to the completion of a Section 106 agreement and the conditions set out in the report. As the application is a live construction site and due to health and safety, a virtual site visit has been undertaken in this case. Members should also be aware that should they vote to refuse the application, then applications of 150 homes or more, the Council must consult the Secretary of State, who then has 21 days to decide whether or not to call in the planning application. Thanks. Thank you. This is an aerial image of the application site. To the east can be seen the Phase 1 of the 2019 permission under construction and the adjacent Copper Beaches development. The site slopes from west to east and has a hedgerow and trees running north to south within the site. The site has the rear gardens of existing properties backing onto the site on 3 sides. To the north is Pond Lane, which forms a secondary access to the site. This is the approved layout for the 2019 permission, showing access of Ankerbold Road and Pond Lane and a looped road with a central area of public open space. This is the permission for 193 dwellings. This is the proposed revised layout with additional 49 dwellings. As can be seen, the access of Ankerbold Road and Pond Lane isn't changed, as is the looped road arrangements. The development also retains a central area of open space, and this has been elongated into a green corridor and now provides views towards the listed North Wingfield Church. The scheme also proposes a leap and a lap play area. As with the extant permission, the proposed dwellings rear gardens back onto existing houses' rear gardens to the north, south and west. On the eastern boundary, there is now a private drive with houses set back from the trees rather than having gardens backing onto the scheme. In the southwest corner along the southern boundary of the site, there are a number of bungalows. This is a coloured version of the plan and shows a central green space and pedestrian links. Yellow indicate private drives and the grey is the adoptable road. All parking is on plot and there is a mixture of frontage and side parking across the side. This shows trees on the southern boundary. The right hand is an extract from the approved layout with the trees overlaid, and the left is the proposed layout. The impact of the trees and the gardens, the proposed properties, is similar to that what could be built under the extant permission. T14 to 16 and T17 were originally proposed to be felled, however the agent has stated that these will now be retained. T18 to 20 and T13 are outside of the application side. This is a photo from Phase 2 looking east down towards Ankerbold Road, which illustrates the levels difference across the side. This is a photo of the Pond Lane access, which is the timber fence that you can see in the centre of the screen. This photo looking south towards properties on Station New Road. To the left is the boundary with the rear gardens of houses on Ankerbold Road. This is a photo of the trees on the southern boundary taken from within the site. These trees are proposed to be retained. It's a view of the northern boundary and a retained hedge. This is you can see on the left hand side of the photo, that's the hedge which is to be retained, and it will be replanted to the end of the property with a fence and then marked by 1.8 timber fence along the site boundary. That's the end of presentation. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Right, we have 3 speakers registered to speak on this. The first of which is an objector, Dean Jones. If you'd like to come up to the speaker's seat, please.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee.
Yeah, you've got 3 minutes when you're ready.
Oh,
Thanks.
sorry.
It's all right.
I'm speaking today on behalf of a number of residents on Ashgrove, New Tupton, whose properties back directly onto this development site. We note the details contained within the section headed Northern Site Boundary of the Planning Committee report prepared by Philip Slater, and fully take on board his comments that the exact location of our property boundary is private civil matter. And I want to be clear from the outset that we are not asking the committee to decide that this afternoon. We're asking the committee to consider is Certificate A, which is part of this application and something the committee does need to be satisfied about before making the decision today. Certificate A requires the applicant to certify that they're the sole owner of the land within the scope of this application, with no other ownership interest in it. Our point is simple. The position of the boundary between our properties and this site is genuinely disputed and has been for a significant number of years. This is extensively documented. While that dispute remains unresolved, we don't believe it can be said with certainty that the applicants own all of the land within the scope of this application. To be clear, we are not asking the committee to rule on the boundary dispute itself this afternoon. We are asking the committee to be aware, before relying on the Certificate A, that its accuracy cannot be currently confirmed one way or the other. And to clarify, that means for this afternoon's decision. 49 additional houses is a significant increase, which will surely prolong the completion of the development further and cause long-term issues for local residents. For 6 years, residents have put up with what is a clear detrimental impact on the quality of their daily lives caused by this development, including constant noise pollution, dust deposits, impact vibration, shaking houses, locations of skips and fires, work being undertaken outside the agreed timeframes, and the outlook now we have from our residential properties overlooking large overgrown earth mounds and dumping grounds for site material. Since 2019-2020, residents have engaged with all relevant parties to discuss our concerns relating to the development and try and reach amicable resolutions. This has been a frustrating experience, resulting in little tangible progress being made despite our best efforts. Residents will have endured this development in one form or another for 11 years, short of any further slippage, which is clearly unacceptable. They are fatigued by the process, and some have given up the ghost as a result of the noted but approved attitude of the planning department / council, who appear to have their hands tied in order to meet government housing build targets. Residents of Ashgrove find themselves torn between their desire to help hold the development and developers to account over their conduct on the site, and with such matters as maintaining trees, hedgerows and long-established existing boundaries.
You've gone over your 3 minutes. Are you summing up?
Yes, I'm just summing up now. Residents will continue to try and work with Northwood and MyPad and other relevant parties to resolve our long-standing boundary issue amicably. If this cannot be achieved, we will explore all options available to us to potentially to include press and media coverage.
Okay.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Dean.
Sorry, it's a bit of a speed read,
It's all
but
right. Have members got any questions for the speaker? No? No, if you'd like to retake your seat.
okay, thank you.
Right, the next speaker is Stuart Ellis, who is a supporter of the development.
Thank you, Chair.
You get 3 minutes when you're ready, Stuart. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a while since I've seen you on behalf of Chesterfield Royal Hospital, and on this occasion we're a little bit confused. So for us, in terms of the Section 106 application that's been recommended against, we'd been through a process previously with North East Derbyshire as one of our partners to help since I last visited Planning Committee. The teams, including Adrian and Lee and Matt, understand the complexity of the model to show that we met the 3 tests. Since then, you've been supportive, and we have received some Section 106 funding and been included in a further agreement. The agreement we had was we'd continue to use the same model and not burden you with a lot of bureaucracy on each application until the local plan was refreshed, and we're currently in that process of reworking the model with the local plan to try and make it clearer. But we're a little bit confused as to why it had changed in between, and this one's gone to decline. Our model is really quite sophisticated, as you'd expect, with health data and links to individual postcodes. We can with fair certainty tell you from that size development there'll be about 600 patients a year attend. Our funding ultimately catches up in 18 to 24 months, but it takes around 7 to 10 years for the capital cycle to catch up. So for us, it's a little bit of a concern as we started to make headway. Over the last 7 years, that capital refresh gap has grown to about 10 million. But it isn't just this development; it's the step development we get from around us, and we're just asking that we've previously flagged, recognising the complexity for the local authority in balancing affordable housing, the need to put housing into spaces, that not everything is always going to be achievable, but we had asked that we have a conversation around some compromise around the overall value of 106 if it was making the development unaffordable, as opposed to a binary yes or no. It's not for us as a health partner to determine or advise whether the actual development itself should go ahead in terms of housing need and what's right for your local population, but it would be remiss of me not to flag that as failing to keep pace of the impact these developments have ultimately impacts on your members and the access to the site. The NHS has plenty of other challenges that aren't related to development, but this is one where we do look to use the guidance. NHS England's guidance is very clear to me every year around capital development that we should be seeking Section 106 support, and I'm happy for it to be proportionate to what's reasonable to the development, but that's the purpose of us attending again today, and I'll stop at that point.
Okay, thank you. Do members have any questions? Neil?
Thank you, Chair. Just waiting for it to go red. Yes, Mr. Ellis, are you referring to the contribution that was requested of 425,000?
I am.
342?
Yes.
And which the officers have considered that request that does not satisfy the relevant statutory test and is not considered reasonable to seek such a contribution. So are you telling us that there's some mechanism that's been missed here, some analysis? Sorry to cut across you, but I have heard this before, that in the borough they use the community infrastructure levy contribution model.
Yeah.
And here we ask for the contribution through 106. Can you tell the committee a bit more about what the difference is, what's missing, or in your view is missing?
So I think the only thing that's missing is obviously the burden is on us to provide evidence that we meet the 3 planning tests and that it's necessary and it relates to this area. The first time I came to the planning committee, there was some confusion to try and understand what's quite a complex model. So since then we have worked with the relevant members of North East Derbyshire to help them understand at a granular level with a number of hours, a number of meetings to do that. And we'd passed that hurdle and agreed that we wouldn't make an overly complicated application each time, going through the data each time. We would use the agreed model that we had until it could be refreshed under resetting of the local plan, which is the process we're engaged in at the moment. So we were just confused that we'd gone from it not being supported to being supported to being unsupported, but nothing had changed from our point of view in the relevance and the way that we apply the model, and the fact that we can identify it to number of people on a street, whether they're coming for outpatients, ED, inpatients, so we know exactly what to expect from an area.
We'll explore that later.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's the point. We need to raise clarity with the officers on that.
Of course, understand.
At a later point in the debate. So, if you'd like to retake your seat, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, our next speaker is the agent of the application, John Bradbury. Three minutes when you're ready.
Okay. Thank you for allowing me to speak as the applicant's planning agent. I've been involved with this site for 2 years through both the pre-application submission and the processing of the planning application, and I'm pleased that we've finally arrived at Planning Committee with a fair and balanced report and a positive recommendation. I have 3 main areas I'd like to cover relevant to the decision you're asked to make. Firstly, I would like to cover the history of the site and its viability. The site secured a full permission for 193 dwellings in 2019. Development was started, but unfortunately the main contractor went into voluntary liquidation in late 2022. My clients acquired the site and business a year later in October 2023 and have sought to redesign the scheme to improve its viability. The passage of time has further affected viability, unfortunately. In simple terms, between October 2022 and May 2026, building costs have risen by 12.8%, whilst sales prices have risen by only 1.5%. This 11.3% divergence has unfortunately undermined the feasibility of a fully policy-compliant scheme. Notwithstanding this challenging market, we have been in detailed negotiations with the council and their appointed viability assessor to maximise the community benefits of the scheme. The final compromise reached of 20 affordable rental unit properties delivered to Ricknold and £784,000 of community contributions pushes the scheme right to the margins of viability from the applicant's perspective and is the maximum that can be agreed to. Secondly, I would like to cover the wider planning merits of the scheme. The site is allocated for housing and is a sustainable location. A greater number of dwellings makes more efficient use of the land and contributes to the district housing supply. The amended design of the site has taken on board the suggestions of a design review panel and improves on the original layout overall. The delivery of affordable rental units aligns with the council's wishes, and delivery is ensured through agreements already reached with Ricknold. The development of the site will secure contributions to other elements of community infrastructure. Due to the passage of time, the dwellings will be built to higher environmental standards, and the scheme will deliver 10% biodiversity net gain. Finally, I would like to deal with the planning balance that committee needs to apply. The council cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, with the latest published figures being 4.47 years, as you've already heard today. This means under paragraph 11D of the MPPF that a presumption in favour of sustainable development has to be applied. Although there are elements of conflict with development plan policy in terms of the quantum of affordable housing and the amounts of Section 106 payments secured, these shortfalls are fully justified by the viability assessment. The additional 49 dwellings, affordable housing and infrastructure provision attract significant planning weight in favour of the scheme. In conclusion, in applying the test in paragraph 11 of the MPPF, the adverse impacts of the development do not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the scheme on this sustainable site when viewed against the policies of the MPPF taken as a whole, and the tilted balance that has to be applied weighs clearly in favour of granting permission. We respectfully request that committee follow the clear and comprehensive professional advice given by officers and resolve to grant planning permission as recommended. Thank you.
Thank you. Do members have any questions for the Speaker? Councillor Peterson?
Yes. Have you resolved the boundary dispute yet, please? Because it's obviously something that's going to cause problems unless you do.
I think the answer that I'll give to that is very similar to what's in the officer report, that resolving that boundary issue is essentially a civil matter. It doesn't prevent you from determining this planning application on its merits. All of the development is readily contained within the land controlled by the applicant. The applicants are willing to continue that dialogue, as the residents have already said they will, to try and determine the precise form and location of the boundary. But we're confident that all of the land that the application relies on is that within the red line identified.
Thank you. Fran? Any further questions for the Speaker? No, if you'd like to retake your seat. Right, now we've got the opportunity for questions to officers. So, Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'd like to explore this Section 106 from the hospital, Chesterfield Royal Hospital, a bit further, because I have come across it before in my short time on this committee. So can officers enlighten me why the tests were considered not reasonable to seek such a contribution, please?
Okay, as we've sort of set out in the report, I'll just find the relevant paragraph.
The bit I'm reading is 7.88.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I mean, the requirements are that it's necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms, directly related to the development, and fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind. What we've had from the Royal Hospital is, in effect, a spreadsheet setting out the cost pressures. So it doesn't set out that it's necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms. So that's why we've taken the view that it doesn't meet those necessary tests, because it's just essentially saying these are the cost pressures on a spreadsheet. There isn't enough detail there for us to be satisfied.
So more evidence would be needed on 2. Is it test 2? Is that what you're saying?
No, on them all.
On them all?
Yeah.
All right. And are we in discussions with the Royal Hospital to try and resolve this for all future applications?
Not in the terms of this application, no.
No,
because
but for going forward, because we have come across this before on this committee.
Yeah.
And are we taking steps to resolve this and get everybody on the same page so that the application from the hospital is compliant?
I'm happy to pick that up. Yeah, I'm happy to pick that up, Chair. Yeah, the long and short of it is yes. I'm personally putting a lot of time and effort, and have been, into building effective relationships with the Integrated Care Board. And from my perspective, you know, if you look across the country, there are scenarios where health trusts are successfully securing Section 106 contributions. And I mean, as the Speaker said, to be fair, we have taken an approach here whereby, where it's not questioned, and this isn't necessarily the best approach necessarily always, but where it isn't questioned, we've secured that funding. So we have secured contributions for the Royal before. The difficulty that we have when that is scrutinised by the applicant or at an appeal stage is what evidence base have we got behind that. So the short answer to your question is yes, we are looking to, from my point of view, the ideal scenario is that the health service provide a response to the local plan, and this is what I'm working on, response to the local plan that clearly indicates the pressures on primary care, and that members will be familiar with those contributions. They go into the square footage of a GP surgery and what additional capacity is needed there. And then a similar approach to hospitals, because the other thing that is definitely apparent when you speak to the ICB, and just general observations about healthcare and how it's managed, is that actually that distinction between primary and secondary is not as clear-cut as it used to be. There's a lot of intermediary stuff, there's a lot of diagnostic centres and things like that, that if you can demonstrate the link between the development and those facilities, that the need for those facilities, you can secure the contribution. The issue is where, at that secondary level, the evidence is about the need for a capacity on a much wider scale, because obviously hospitals don't serve the tight areas that a GP surgery does. So getting the ICB to provide that kind of information is absolutely what we've been discussing with them, with the local plan, alongside more information about how they're going to develop GP surgeries in the district as well. So it's certainly part of the discussion. And you know, I'd recognise that at the moment it's a bit of a patchwork in terms of we secure a contribution where it's not tested, but that isn't really a long-term strategy, because we need that evidence base in place.
And following on from that then, the hospital is an acute treatment centre, but there's also other things like the mental health services that are provided. And do you look to the Integrated Care Board for overview of that, or how does it work?
Yeah, I think it remains an inconsistent picture, I think, in terms of across the country there are different approaches to how much the ICB provide and how much the trusts provide in terms of comments and applications. My issue, and you alluded to it, Councillor Baker, is that where you don't have community infrastructure levy as a flat charge on developments, it's then case by case basis. And that is more of a challenge in respect of I mean, when I say generalised evidence bases, it's not like you can be very general and get a SIL adopted. You've got to go through a justifying process, but you do that at a point in time, whereas Section 106s are obviously at the point in time of each application. So the long and short of it is trying to get the ICB to provide the comments in respect of both primary care, secondary care, and any other care that is affected by, well, obviously all aspects of care are affected by population. So yes, that is the position that we need to get to, and it's a work in progress. But from our point of view as the planning authority, to have that solid evidence base underpinning a local plan is where we need to be, so that we can seek those contributions more consistently.
Thank you.
Right, my questions are more around the 106 monies and its distribution, which obviously we have had a little discussion on, and it's just regarding like the highways contribution with regard to going to the A61, which obviously we've got the AMCA money that's doing a study on the A61 corridor. Whether that's a good way to spend the money or whether we can spend it better on sustainable travel, maybe putting a bus shelter in, reducing the speed limit along Ankerbold Road to 30 miles an hour. It's just really negotiating around what we can do better to help the residents of Tupton and mitigate the extra development that's likely to happen here.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, as is set out in the report, the viability is challenging on the site, and we've got, if you like, an agreed pot of money of 784,000, of which we've sort of looked at as officers and prioritised education, GPs, and then the remaining's gone to the travel plan and the A61 mitigation. So certainly we can look at that 200k roughly for A61 mitigation, discuss with the parish council and the highway authority as to where that can be spent closer to the application site, and we can have those discussions as part of the section 106 should permission be granted.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? No, right, thank you. Right, I'm now going to open the floor for the debate. Who's going to start us off? Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. So, listening to the agent's report, it appears to me that a lot of this pressure is coming from the 11.3% divergence from build cost versus sale price. So the sites had to be redesigned, and the viability assessments have been done, and the council's happy with these. I take it from the officer's report, completely happy. And so it's already received planning permission, this site. What we are looking at today is whether the additional 49 homes in the layout are to be given additional approval. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's what we're doing today.
Yeah, correct.
Thank you. So that was my starting the debate off where we are, where I think we are.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Baker. Anybody else?
I'm happy to check and chair on viability if you want.
Yes, David, if you'd like to come back in there.
Just picking up on the point about viability, Chair, and what Councillor Baker was saying. So, yes, we've got to a point where we are in agreement with the applicant. I think it's fair to say that took a few rounds, and we did scrutinise their information strongly. The case officer did a lot of work in respect to that. So we do use an independent person to review our viability, to review a developer's viability appraisals and make recommendations on our behalf. From the starting point of pretty much nothing, we've ended up where we are. So I think, you know, obviously negotiations are dependent on where you start, but we have moved quite significantly. And I would also say that I think we've had quite an effective arrangement with Ricknold Homes in this case, because it's allowed officers to present a case to the applicant in kind of real terms, if you like, in terms of the figures they would get for those 20 affordable houses. So the long and short of it is, yes, we are in agreement with the developer at this point, but that is following significant negotiations with them to get to this point.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand this has been quite a difficult site with previous history, and I think we're in a catch-22 situation here where we have got some contribution coming towards Tupton and the surround and the infrastructure. And I think we just need to move on, and I'll open the floor to a motion. Anybody prepared to? Councillor Lacey.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to move that we accept, go with officers' recommendations with conditions.
Thank you, Councillor Rouse. And I presume this will include that we can have negotiations about the 106 and the way that's, yeah, great.
Yeah, that's fine, Chair. And so just to be clear, Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to be clear, that would be a recommendation to resolve to grant today, delegating to officers discussions with the parish council and the local highway authority about specific mitigation measures on highways for this scheme, and then to basically determine the application once those schemes are identified. If there is an issue identifying those projects, then we will come back to committee.
Okay, thank you, David. Right, I'll put that to the vote. Thank you, members. That's approved unanimously. Thank you very much. Right, we'll now move on to the second application, which is NED//01062/MFL Sutton. The next application is in respect of Central Electricity Generating Board, Kayla Lane, Kalo. I will first hand over to the Governance Officer to make a statement. Over to you, Michael.
Mark's got it sorted. Yes, thank you, Chair, and through you. Members should note a procedural matter in relation to item 7. The recommendation is to approve the development which does not accord with the development plan. Applications of that kind must be publicised both by site notice and by advertisement in a local newspaper. Following publication of the agenda, officers identified that this publicity had not been carried out. A site notice was posted on 9th of July and an advertisement placed in the Derbyshire Times on the 23rd of July. The period for representations does not expire until the 13th of August 2026. Because that period has not expired, the Council cannot lawfully issue a decision notice on this application today. Members are, however, able to consider the application and to resolve how they are minded to determine it, with the decision notice issued under delegated authority once that period has expired. Any representations received before the 13th of August will be considered by the planning manager. Where they raise a material consideration not before members today, the planning manager will consult with the assistant director and the chair, and the application will be referred back to this committee, unless it is clear that the committee would reach the same decision in any event. Members should therefore approach this item on the basis that the decision is not final today and that they retain the ability to reconsider it if new matters emerge. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that clarity. Right, I'm now going to hand you over to Graham Cooper, Planning Officer, to introduce this item.
Thanks, Joe. Hopefully that's working. So this application seeks consent for the construction of a 400 kV gas insulated switchgear GIS substation with associated infrastructure. So the proposal includes the diversion and realignment of footpaths and felling of woodland trees. The full title is on the screen there. So late representations have been received and are set out in the summary update report circulated to members, and as previously mentioned by officers from governance and reported in the late representations report, due to the need to advertise this recommendation as a departure from the development plan, officers recommend that members resolve that they are minded to grant permission subject to the conditions set out in the officer report, and that authority be delegated to the planning manager to issue the decision notice after the expiry of the departure advertisement period concludes, in line with the directions set out in the late representations report. So members are asked to consider a major infrastructure proposal today. So that's for the expansion of the national grid network at Kalo. Officers acknowledge that the development would extend built infrastructure into the countryside and would result in landscape and visual harm, together with the loss of some trees and hedgerow. These impacts weigh materially against the proposal. Against this, the scheme would provide strategically important infrastructure forming part of the national grid's Great Grid Upgrade, supporting energy security, the transmission of renewable energy, and the transition towards net zero electricity network. Significant weight has been attached to these benefits.
So there are no statutory consultee objections to the proposal, and other technical matters are considered capable of mitigation through planning conditions. So members are therefore being asked to consider whether the substantial public benefits of the proposal outweigh the identified policy conflict and environmental harm. So this slide illustrates the site shaded orange. You've got Calo off to the west. You've got Calo Lane to the north of the site. To the south, where there are fields, you've currently got a solar farm which is currently being built out. So that's nearly a 50 megawatt scheme, and it comes right up to the southwest boundary that you can see on the site. So this is a little bit more zoomed in plan of the site, and you can see the relationship with the properties. So you've got residential properties that we passed this morning on site visits to the west. You've got some to the northeast. You've got a farm to the northeast. You've got a couple of properties down to the southwest, off that corner near those trees. And you've got a property which we visited earlier today along Hallflash Lane to the east of the application site. So this is the red line site location plan. So the site covers an area of approximately 15 hectares. So this is the site layout plan of the proposal. You can see the access taken from the north. The substation is centrally located. There are new pylon and wires formed across the site. It's worth noting the pylons sit outside the parameters of this application, as do the cables that come in from the south and north. So this plan shows the proposed landscaping mitigation plan. Woodland loss to the west of the site will be partially reinstated after completion and removal of the temporary works. Bund screening will be created to the east and northern edges. And you can make out the current rights of way crossing the site, and we observed these on the site visit this morning, so there'll be a diversion of a couple of the footpaths across the site. So this plan just illustrates the extent of cut and fill required to accommodate the proposed development. We explored that on site as well. We had a good look at the levels that were currently on site and explored kind of the changes that would be necessary, and had a good walk around the site along the public footpaths. As we saw on site, the application site gently slopes upwards to the south edge of the site, and then it falls away quite steeply outside the application site. The red on this plan is the cut and green is the fill areas of work. So this is the elevation plans of the proposed transformers, gantries and new substation. The substation is the tallest structure, and that would be at 15 metres tall. It's quite tricky to make out, but I've also included it in my officer report, and we explored it again on site. The cross section of the site, so existing at the top, then beneath it is the proposed, and again the bottom two is the relationship with Hallflash Farm. So this is a bit more zoomed in. It's also included in the officer report, and we discussed it on site earlier today, and that relationship with Hallflash Farm to the largest structure that will be on the development. So a couple of photos just to refresh our mind. So view along Calo Lane with the proposed access on the left hand side. This is a view east across the existing substation. So the intervening land, there'll be an access road, and hedgerow will screen on the near side. So this is a view looking east towards the existing substation. So the proposed substation will sit in the intervening land, and that hedgerow that you can see in the foreground removed. And this final photo is just taken looking west. So the proposed substation will sit between the photographer and the little pocket of woodland at the back of the site. The existing substation sits to the right hand side of the hedgerow that you can see on the side of this photo. And that concludes the presentation, Chair.
Thank you for that, Graham. All right, members, we have 4 speakers on this item. The first one being Hilary Fullwood, an objector. If you'd like to come forward, please, Hilary. Hello. You have 3 minutes when you're ready.
I don't think I'll take 3 minutes. My name's Hilary Fullwood and I live at Hallflash Farm, and I'm surrounded by Great British Energy. I've got solar panels at one side and all sorts of other things at the other side. And now I'm going to be confronted by this extremely large infrastructure. I'm 82 years old. I've lived in the property at Hallflash Farm all my life, and I don't want to see the land around it destroyed. I'm desperately aware of the environmental problems that it's going to cause. Things are going to die, loads of insects are going to die, and the animals that are on there are going to die or move into some other part. Calo is becoming very small. We're losing all our rural landscape. I know I feel impotent at talking to you about this because I know what the answer's going to be and I know what you're going to say, and it'll be for the good of everybody, but it's not for my good and I don't want to see it. And the land that it is proposed on has had reports that the land is not safe, it's insecure underneath, and of course it's been mined and all sorts of things in the past. And we've had trouble with water. We get trouble every year with water when it rains very heavily. We've even had flooding in the house. And the National Grid have paid for some repairs to be done because it's been flooded, but the issue hasn't been finished with. And so this issue will still continue, whatever they do. I can't really say much more. I'm going to leave it to my son because, of course, he can talk much better than I can. But I do hope you'll think about the environment when you make this decision. It's not just about the National Grid and about what's good. It's about money. Of course, it's about money. And there, I think I rest my case. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have any members got any questions? No? If you'd like to retake your seat, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jonathan Fullwood. That's all right, no problem. When you're ready, don't worry.
I'm getting old as well, I need my glasses. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Jonathan Fullwood and I object to this proposed 400 kilovolt development on behalf of our community. North East Derbyshire has already absorbed massive solar and battery developments. We have done our bit, but placing a major 400 kilovolt industrial site on this specific piece of agricultural land right on the doorstep of residential homes crosses the line. It is fundamentally wrong, the wrong development in the wrong place. First, the physical risks are critical material considerations. The Coal Authority highlights severe hazards from historic open cast mining and mine shaft collapse on site. They highlight there is still considerable risk from differential settlement. The flood risk assessment shows there is an area of high flood risk within the site immediately south of the existing substation that overlaps with the proposed development. The original ground investigation report and mining risk assessment in August 2025 by Jacobs showed elevated levels of hydrogen sulfide, elevated levels of carbon monoxide and volatile organic compounds from boreholes on site. Environmentally, this site destroys ancient woodland, fells irreplaceable tree canopy and disrupts a public right-of-way. The Campaign for Rural England are rightly dismayed by this proposal. Once ancient woodland is gone, no planning permission can restore it.
Second, the scale of visual and noise impact on nearby residents is unacceptable. A 400 kilovolt site introduces gantry structures over 12 metres tall, supergrid transformers and heavy security fencing, completely dominating open farmland. Proposed screening cannot hide structures of this scale. Worse, these transformers produce a persistent 24/7 low-frequency tonal hum. A continuous acoustic footprint right next to homes severely harms residential amenity and sleep. Furthermore, developing best and most versatile agricultural land directly conflicts with national policies prioritising land protection when alternative sites exist. Third, our infrastructure cannot cope. Previous survey work by the developer damaged our local road network. The damage remains unmade. Bringing multi-axle abdominal loads and heavy HGVs down narrow rural lanes creates an unacceptable highway safety hazard. Finally, National Grid dismissed alternative locations such as their sister site in Rotherham or lower grade industrial plots, citing economic considerations. But shareholder cost convenience is not a valid planning justification to impose environmental and physical ruin on this community. To quote a well-known proverb, the forest was shrinking, but the trees kept voting for the axe because the handle was made of wood. Do not be persuaded that destroying local safety and ancient woodland is necessary progress. For reasons of ground instability, continuous noise, highway safety and alternative siting, I urge the committee to refuse this planning permission. Have some strength. Draw the line here today. On a personal note, I am painfully aware that I cannot win here today, but I have the strength to stand here as a 5-generation North East Derbyshire family facing the destruction of our home and our land. I don't care if you understand it, but I want you to feel it. And if I today have got one of you to think and one of you to pause, then I have done my job here today. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. Right, the next speaker is... Oh, sorry, do members have any questions first? No, sorry. Thanks, if you'd like to retake your seat. The next speaker is James Leeming, the applicant.
Good afternoon, Chair, members and members of the audience. My name is James Leeming. I'm the Project Director for National Grid's Chesterfield to High Marnham project. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today regarding our application for the proposed Chesterfield 400 kV substation. I'd like to cover 3 areas: why this infrastructure and project specifically is needed, why this location was selected, and why the benefits this project will deliver locally and nationally. I'd like to begin with perhaps the most important question today: why this project is needed. National Grid's role is to transport electricity safely, reliably and efficiently from where it is generated to where it is needed. The energy system is changing rapidly and the electricity demand is forecast to increase significantly over the coming decades as more homes adopt electric vehicles and low carbon heating. As industry increasingly electrifies and more renewable generation continues to connect to the network, the demand placed upon the transmission system continues to grow. While we continue to maximise the capacity of the existing network wherever possible, there comes a point where upgrades alone are no longer enough. New infrastructure is required. The need for reinforcement has been identified through the National Electricity Network planning process and forms part of the Great Grid Upgrade, the largest programme of investment in the electricity transmission network for generations. This project will increase capability and resilience of the network between Yorkshire and the Midlands and support the connection of approximately 2.4 gigawatts of renewable generation, helping deliver energy security, supporting economic growth and ensuring the network remains fit for future generation. A key question for any infrastructure project is whether there are better alternatives. Before bringing this project forward, National Grid undertook a detailed technical engineering and environmental assessment, and that included looking at several options. This location emerged as the preferred site because it sits alongside electricity infrastructure, includes the existing Chesterfield substation and existing overhead lines. This enables infrastructure to be connected in one location whilst helping to minimise the environmental impacts and the cost to consumers. Importantly, National Grid already owns this land and has a good relationship currently with their tenant farmer. Leaving a legacy is something we are passionate about. Locally, the project will support future growth by ensuring sufficient electricity network capability is available for homes, businesses and onward investment across the region. During construction, opportunities will be created for local employment, apprenticeships, engagement with schools and colleges will encourage future careers in engineering infrastructure. STEM is something my team care about deeply, and many of my team started their career journey inspired by engineers who came to visit their schools. We will continue to do the same. The government has also introduced a community benefit framework for communities hosting this type of infrastructure. For this project, funding of over £600,000 is anticipated, creating opportunities for local-led improvements, community initiatives outside of the planning process. So to conclude, Chair and members, this is an important national infrastructure project that addresses a clearly identified electricity network need. The site has been selected following a thorough assessment of alternatives. The impacts identified through the planning process have been carefully assessed and appropriately mitigated, as my colleague Charlie will set out in further detail as the agent. Against those impacts, it's a compelling public benefit case, improved energy security, a more resilient network, support for renewable generation, ecological enhancements and investment in local communities. We are aiming to complete construction by... of course. We will aim to complete construction by the end of 2030 to meet the need of those network demands. Should we receive a positive decision today, we'll look to commence construction before the end of this year. For those reasons, National Grid respects that members support this officer recommendation and approve the application. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to take any questions.
Right, members, do you have any questions? Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. I'm asking about what other sites have actually been considered, or is that your colleague going to tell us that?
No, I can go into that, Councillor. So we submitted as part of the planning application a really detailed site assessment study that considered, I think, up to 12 different sites around the Chesterfield region. This project's part of a bigger project as well, so there's in effect multiple substations we're looking to build. So we have to look at various locations and assess the ecological impacts, the connection impacts, the land acquisition impacts. So it's a really detailed assessment which has been submitted and I believe is there for public digestion. But we landed on this location for various reasons. It's not just to do with cost or not just to be doing that in fact it's next door to the current National Grid substation. There's a whole plethora of reasons why we've ended up here.
Well, is it not true that the Chesterfield to Wellington line will commence at this place and the incoming line will come into this place?
So yeah, it's good that you asked me that question because it's a separate project altogether. That's separate. It's a development consent order project which is going through its own statutory consultation. That is the termination point for this project, but it is a whole separate project.
But it's sort of a predetermined location then, isn't it?
Oh, no. They would have to connect in to wherever this substation went to.
Right. So Colite was mentioned.
Yes.
Have you looked at Colite?
Absolutely. So, in terms of locations?
Yeah, to move it to a former industrial place like Colite, which is currently being reclaimed. Have you looked at anywhere like that? Colite in particular?
I don't believe so. I could ask one of my colleagues to pick that up specifically, but if it's all detailed in our assessment report of all the options. So this is our preferred site for various reasons. And I think we've set that out quite clearly.
I can understand that. I'm just trying to get my head around the fact that we've seen the other consultation about the overhead lines, which are causing their own controversy in their own ways. But you were saying those lines could be routed to another site if that site was better.
It's really quite complicated to answer that question because fundamentally the substation is there to connect in and move the power around. Obviously the lines move the power, but the substation holds the power. So regardless of where the substation is, the lines would go where the substation is located. But obviously they're two separate projects altogether. So you have to consider each of them on their own merit. That's going through a different planning process, which is development consent order.
I understand that. And the final question is about the building.
Yeah, sure.
For us non-technical people, what is in the building and why does it go in the building?
It's switchgear and it's in the building just to protect it because obviously it's very high cost and very technical electricity equipment. So it's a GIS gas insulated switchgear substation. So obviously the equipment that's in there can't be left outside. It has to be inside a building so it's protected from the elements.
Is it noisy? Is that why it's got to
No, not noisy. No, not at all. I think the previous gentleman referenced noise and that's often sometimes it's called LOHUM, is a fairly accurate representation from supergrid transformers, and that's quite common across all our substations.
It is. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Cheetham.
Thanks, Jack. Can you hear me? I was going to pick up the question about noise, because the previous speakers mentioned that there's a noise issue that might cause sleep disruption at night. So you're saying that isn't sufficient. So,
yeah, it's not specifically. You know, if you stood right next to a supergrid transformer, it is a fairly hum, but it does kind of dissipate the further you are from it. And obviously, don't forget that there'll be a significant amount of trees and foliage planted to barrier that.
So it wouldn't be hearable, is it?
No,
What's the hearing equivalent visible from the nearest properties?
Unlikely.
And, and the second part of my question is, the speakers mentioned the risk of mine shaft collapse. Has that been taken into account by your
Absolutely.
engineers and
So
designers?
we are engaging significantly with a mine remediation authority. Previously the Coal Authority, recently changed the name. They obviously have a keen interest in what we're doing, but fundamentally we can build this safely. We can engineer it. The geotechnical solution we are building, we are proposing is absolutely robust. It just might mean more piles or a different sort of engineering approach, but it's absolutely robust what we're delivering here, and we're engaging with the MRA all the time.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Gay.
Okay, we've visited this morning. It's clearly a massive project. How long would the construction phase be?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's about 4 years. Chesterfield is a really, as we've talked about today, is a complicated project to build. We build a lot of substations. Chesterfield's probably one of our most complicated ones, just for the location, the geotechnical solution, as we've said before. It's about a 4-year programme to build. So if we hopefully get permission today, we'll be starting it towards the end of the year, and we'll be looking to complete around the end of 2030.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I've got one question, just regarding the building. Is the building soundproofed in any way?
Yeah, the building will be soundproof, but the equipment doesn't make a huge amount of. That's not what generally makes noise. That's not the reason why it's in a building. You know, that's enclosed, but it would be soundproofed anyway.
It will be soundproofed.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Thank you. Councillor House.
Have you considered the colours? The colours
of the cladding?
Yes.
Absolutely. So this came up a recent planning committee in a different district, and I believe that's something we can absolutely work with officers on, and local residents. Because you see a lot of these developments, don't you? And it can be a different screen, grey, green, up, down, left, right. So we can absolutely work with officers to determine that. I think that'll be a condition that is on the development to agree with officers and officer councillors. So we're absolutely open to that.
Right, thank you. I'd like to retake your seat. No further questions. Right, the next speaker is Charlie Meyer, the agent. You've got 3 minutes when you're ready. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Charlie Mayer, and I'm acting as agent on behalf of National Grid for this proposal. We fully recognise that major infrastructure projects can generate concerns for local communities. Over the last 2 years, we've undertaken extensive surveys and a 4-week public consultation with 2 in-person events and online webinars to understand those concerns, identify and design appropriate mitigation measures. We've listened to officers, statutory consultees, members and communities throughout this process. We've continued to work closely with officers throughout the application process, and have continued to engage with statutory stakeholders, local residents, parish councils and board members. The application has considered ecology, landscape and visual effects, highways, drainage, flood risk, public rights of way, heritage, noise, construction impacts and local amenity. In relation to visual impact, significant landscape planting and screening is proposed as part of the development to integrate the substation into the surrounding landscape over time. Although the development would remain visible from a limited number of nearby properties and footpaths, its effects would be reduced through the extensive native woodland and hedgerow planting, strengthened boundaries, species-rich grassland, wetland habitats and long-term landscape management. In relation to flooding, the site is in an area of low flood risk generally. Our application includes a comprehensive drainage strategy incorporating attenuation and surface water management systems designed to ensure there's no increase in flood risk. We recognise that construction is also a concern, and it's our duty to manage this responsibly. Traffic will be managed through agreement with the Highways Authority and National Highways. Detailed plans will manage construction traffic, traffic management including signals and signage, construction working hours, noise, dust and site access. Contractors will follow considerate construction practices and set routes and residents will have a clear route to contact the project team throughout the construction works. Public rights of way will be maintained with temporary and permanent diversions where necessary, ensuring continued public access throughout construction and beyond. Members will note from the report in front of you that our development represents a departure from the development plan. While this may sound concerning, it relates specifically to the fact that the development site is classed as open countryside. While our proposals conflict with this use, officers agreed that the benefits of the scheme significantly outweigh this limited departure from the adopted plan. The proposal will also deliver well in excess of the National Biodiversity Net Gain requirement of 10%, a gain of 79% for habitat units and 13% for hedgerow units. In practical terms, that means more woodland planting, more hedgerows, more habitat creation, and a measurable improvement in biodiversity compared to the current position. We hope that what you've heard today demonstrates the work we've undertaken to develop a responsible scheme that delivers vital national infrastructure alongside meaningful local benefits. For those reasons, we respectfully ask members to support the officer recommendation and approve the application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Members have any questions? No, what do I like? Thank you. Would you like to read the seat? Oh, sorry, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, there's been some passion in this. Have we explored everything that we can do for the community of Calo with what you've done? And can we do any more for the near neighbours that we've heard speak today?
It's a good question. So specifically on doing things for neighbours, one of the things that we've identified is that there is a hedgerow between our site. There's a very, very narrow gap between our site and Hallflash Farm, whose residents you've heard from. And in that gap is an existing hedgerow, which is also owned by National Grid. So as part of this application, what we'd be able to do is make sure that that hedgerow is maintained to a higher height than it currently is, up to around 4 metres, which would help to further kind of mitigate the visual impact that the scheme would have on residents from that side. More generally as well, in terms of residents in Calo, I know that a couple of people wrote in worried that construction traffic might use Calo Green as a construction traffic route, which would be completely inappropriate, and we've set out in our proposals, and this would be enforced through planning conditions as well, that we wouldn't use Calo Green. We'd come in from the A617 and then up I think it's Haskey Lane and then onto Calo Lane from there.
Thank you. No further questions? If you'd like to retake your seat, thanks. Right, members, you now have the opportunity to ask questions of officers. Councillor Baker.
Yes, just taking up this point about the alternatives. I may have missed it, but I can't see the alternative assessment in this pack. So I presume that the agent and the other speaker was referring to a document that's uploaded on the website somewhere. Is it comprehensive? Can we see any of this? Can we see the main sites that have been looked at, please?
Thanks, Councillor Baker. So in the report and online, so within the report, first of all, at 7.79 to 7.82, it is a high level kind of précis of what has been submitted. So there's a document that has been submitted which explores all the different sites that have been considered in the kind of siting study and the different stages that took part in that. So the detail of the study that I can see, so there's a search area more locally, 2 kilometres from the existing site to find alternate sites, and the 8 other sites were considered and discounted. So the scheme that's been put forward, in a particular way, especially about the proximity to an existing substation, so for the ease of connectivity and the connection into their existing infrastructure, and the reduce the extent of needing further cabling or other infrastructure that might connect to. You talked about maybe the Colite site. I'm not aware of that being considered or of that coming forward, but imagine if that was put there, the extra infrastructure that might be needed to connect it up to the existing substation that's at
I'm
Calo.
with that.
So yeah, I'm happy that the report that's been provided is a comprehensive site selection process, and I'd hope that the kind of summary that I provided to members was helpful, and that carries weight in the planning balance for us as officers.
Yeah, I was hoping to see a diagram that just said like alternative site 1, alternative site 2, alternative site 3, and why they were discounted. But I know you've written, it's a lot of words here, and it's a summary. But I'll defer to your job. That's your job to analyse those things, and that's why I'm asking you. If you're satisfied with it, it's a proper alternative site appraisal, and it's been given the appropriate weight. That'll do for me.
Yeah, so just to add into that, so within that site selection report, there is mapping and exploration of other sites that have been considered, and that's pretty standard of what we'd see maybe for a solar scheme, such as that we've seen that we've brought to committee before. So it is the industry standard that I would expect to see in a report. For
Thank you very much for that.
Any further questions from officers? Councillor Lacey.
Thank you, Chair. Question to Graham. I feel, very, very sorry for the Forward family and the flooding that's occurring on their property. Could we make that a condition that is sorted out before?
Yeah, so thanks, Councillor Lacey. So on the site visit this morning, we walked along Hallflash Lane. You weren't able to attend, but I think it's quite clear to see, I've been there in the winter, that there is a lot of kind of egress along that, and there's channels that have been created, and there are conditions to cover on site to make sure that there are no additional flood risk issues created to the neighbouring residents. So I'd hope that National Grid will help look to work with the neighbour, and they've said that today, that they're looking to work with them to make sure and explore every option to minimise the impact. But we can categorically say that the scheme won't increase the risk of flooding outside the site, and that's in our control.
Thank you, Graham.
Thank you, Councillor Baker.
Thank you. Well, following on from that, during the construction phase but you've got condition 29, I believe, or is a condition. Can you just remind members what the conditions are to avoid excessive surface water runoff during the construction phase, which we all agree is going to be a big cut and fill exercise, please?
So thanks, Councillor Baker. So there are a number of drainage conditions. So we've got conditions 18 through to 20, which cover the drainage. So there's the design of the drainage scheme, and then there's ensuring that the destination for surface water accords with the drainage hierarchy. And there's also the construction surface water management plan and how additional surface water will be dealt with, and that's condition 20, just to avoid water, egressing out of the site onto that lane, which is clearly an issue which we've observed.
Thank you.
No further questions from officers? No, right. I'll open the floor up for debate. Anybody want to start us off? I'll make a start then. I think it's I really feel for the Forwards. I think I can see their predicament being situated in that location, and obviously for such a long time, and this is going to have an effect on their life. But we also have to consider what's before us and the impact this is going to have long term on upgrading the grid, which is clearly something that we need to do. So I'd like to hopefully mitigate that we can do all we can and get National Grid to work with these residents to try and mitigate any issues that might occur. And I'm happy to propose that we go with officer recommendation on this. Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, I'd like to obviously concur with what you said. My concern is for the residents of Calo, and particularly the people who have spoken today and the passion they've spoken with. And absolutely, yes, you've pricked my conscience, and we have our conscience pricked very often in this room, believe me. So, but as you say, sometimes we have to make a decision slightly against what we might feel personally, and this is something that I'm going to second, Chair, from your proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Right, we've got it. Anybody else want to comment? Councillor Baker?
Yes, unfortunately the decision to do this sort of thing was made years ago when we embarked upon the climate change solution we embarked upon. And it was plain to all of us involved at the time that the grid would got to be increased by up to a factor of maybe 9 times the complexity of what it currently is. So we're only just embarking on it. I wish there was another solution to it, but that's beyond the realms of this committee. So, Chair, I support your recommendation.
Thank you. I'm going to put this to the vote then, please. Thank you, members. That's passed.
You want to have a short recess?
Yeah. Right, members, it's 15:21 and we've still got, well, I think that time's wrong actually, which is not. I'm just going to give us a 5-minute break because we've got another 2 lengthy applications, so we'll have a 5-minute recess. Thank you. Right then, members, thank you for keeping that a brief break. The next application before us is in respect of land to the south and east of 14 to 16 Dart Lane, Calo. It's item number 8, NED//00206/MFL Sutton. I'm now going to hand you over to Alice, who's going to give us a brief presentation. Thank you, Alice.
Thank you, Chair. Okay. This is an application for major development of 41 dwellings, together with landscaping, infrastructure, access arrangements and associated works at land to the south and east of 14 to 16 Dark Lane, Calo. Late reps were received and were sent over to members on Monday, so you should have received them. Next slide, please, Graham. This shows the site in the context of Calo, which is a level 2 settlement and is considered to have a good level of sustainability. The site is located outside the settlement development limits and is therefore in the countryside. As such, the proposed development plan conflicts with policies SS1, SS2 and SS9 of the North East Derbyshire Local Plan. However, these policies are now considered out of date due to the deficit in the supply of housing land and therefore cannot be afforded significant weight in the decision-making process. The application site is formed from 2 fields located to the south of the village of Calo. The 2 fields to the northeast are now being developed for housing, so I don't know if you can point to that one there. So there's those, and there's also a site to the northwest which is currently being developed. So we saw those when we went on our site visit this morning. The application site therefore fills a gap between new development outside the southern boundary of the Calo settlement development limits. It is considered that the proposal will result in moderate landscape harm due to it being viewed with Calo and the other new developments as a backdrop. This is the red line plan which shows the new development at Oakham Grange Phase 1. This site will have, the current site will have vehicle access from Oaks Farm Lane via the Phase 1. There will be no vehicle access from Dart Lane, but there will be pedestrian links. The proposed dwellings will be located within the northern portion of the site, with the southern portion retained for public open space, surface water attenuation and provision of biodiversity net gains. There will be footpath connections through the site. The housing will include 9 affordable dwellings. Officers have identified some design shortcomings, which are outlined in the officer report. However, it is considered that these are limited and not considered to result in an unacceptable standard of design or placemaking. Here are some photos of the site. This is the site viewed from Dart Lane, so it's well screened by mature hedgerows. This is a view from the south of the site looking north towards Calo, and the housing will be located in the centre of the view at the top of the site. This is a view from the south of the site, this is a view looking across the site to Oakham Grange Phase 1 to the east. Set against the identified harms are a number of significant benefits, including meaningful contribution to the district's housing supply within walking distance of services, facilities and public transport. The proposal will also deliver significant biodiversity net gains, extensive areas of public open space, enhanced pedestrian connectivity and economic benefits associated with construction and future occupation. The applicant is willing to accept a shortened commencement period and is already active on the adjoining Phase 1 site. Significant weight is therefore also given to the likelihood of early delivery. As such, on balance, officers are recommending that the application be approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alice. Right, we've got one speaker on this this item, which is Darren Abbott from Woodall Homes, the applicant. Sure you know the process, Darren. You've got 3 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon. My name is Darren Abbott, Planning Director of the applicant and local Derbyshire house builder Woodall Homes. We're delighted to continue our partnership and investment in North East Derbyshire and build on recent successes. As outlined in your officer's presentation, Calo itself is identified in the local plan as one of the district's most sustainable settlements, where future growth is intended to be directed beyond the main towns. This is a well-related parcel of land adjoining Calo's settlement boundary, sitting between our successful Phase 1 development to the east and the development under construction to the west, creating a logical and well-contained infill parcel. Over the past 18 months, we've worked closely with your officers, who have been excellent throughout and are a real credit to the authority. We've also promoted the site through the local plan and engaged constructively with the Council's design review panel and consultees, carefully refining the proposals alongside detailed technical assessments and landscape advice. As a result of that collaborative approach, the application attracts no statutory objections, including from County Highways, the lead local flood authority, Yorkshire Water and Derbyshire Wildlife Trust. The development is carefully designed to integrate seamlessly with Phase 1 in terms of access, character and landscape structure, ensuring a coherent and well-considered continuation. A mix of energy-efficient 1 to 4 bedroom homes are proposed, including 9 affordable dwellings as well as bungalows to meet strong local demand. This considered mix provides opportunities for social and affordable rent, first-time buyers, families, downsizers and those with mobility needs. We also look forward to continuing our successful partnership with Ricknold Homes, having transferred 25 affordable homes to them over the past 2 years. Environmentally, the development delivers broad public open space, sustainable drainage features that manage surface water while enhancing biodiversity and strong pedestrian links, including connections to the existing public rights-of-way network. Its sustainable location provides easy access to local services and employment, including the nearby Chesterfield Royal Hospital, where a number of our existing purchasers currently work. The scheme also delivers a significant 34% biodiversity net gain habitat enhancement and 21% uplift for hedgerows, hugely exceeding the statutory requirement. Importantly, mindful of the housing land supply position, this is an immediately deliverable scheme. We have committed to a greatly reduced 12-month implementation period, enabling these much-needed homes to come forward quickly. Oaks Farm Lane has been upgraded to Derbyshire County Council adoptable standards through a rigorous process involving planning permission, technical approvals and independent road safety audits. In summary, this is a sustainable, policy compliant and well-designed proposal that evolved through the positive collaboration and will deliver much needed homes, affordable housing, environmental enhancements and continued investment. We therefore respectfully ask members to support the opposite recommendation and approve the application, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
Thank you for that. Can you enlighten us as to what the proposals are for the management of the quite large public open space provision that's going to be there, please?
Yeah, so ordinarily what would occur is that will be transferred to a management company who would own the asset, and the residents would pay a management fee towards that. But as part of that transfer, there's conditions that are proposed within this application that officers have suggested and are standard on other applications that would require management plans and landscape management plans that will need to be approved. And then if those are approved, those would then form the basis for the management of that open space by the management company.
So what I'm sort of getting at really is, what will the cost arrangement be? It's a bigger open space than many other similar sized developments. So will the residents be faced with a larger than average contribution to this management company, or will the developer be putting some money into this company?
It's ordinarily, for a scheme of this size, minded of Phase 1, it would be £100 to £200 per year for the properties. And of course that would also be wrapped up in the 106 in terms of the requirements to manage the biodiversity net gain requirements as well. So residents would contribute. We'd obviously install all the relevant landscaping features, and then that will be handed over to the management company thereafter.
Just on that point, you're saying what about the Phase 1? Will they be contributing space?
So they already do. So when residents purchase the property as part of their transfer pack, the fees are set out within that, and then that is capped to, I think it's inflation, so it can't shoot up exponentially. So the residents, when they sign the contract, if you like, the fees for the management of the open space are set out within that as part of that up front.
Okay. I've got a site plan here, and I was just concerned of why you've put all the social housing all tucked away in one of the corners of the estate, the furthest away from the entrance to the estate. Is there any what's your thinking on that? Why has that happened?
Particular reason. So from a management perspective, we're often asked this by officers as part of our discussions in terms of collating the affordable housing. So from a management perspective, on this site, on other sites, we're asked by the registered providers to put them together. Obviously, the larger the scheme and the greater the provision, there's potentially scope there to disperse and pepper pot around the site. But given we've got a limited number of units here, which is 9, they are located closely together. Also, it's quite a key design feature. So there's a water main running. If you imagine Dart Lane and take a line straight down south through the site, there's a water main that runs through that. So from a design constraint, we've needed to provide a private drive around that area, but also then front onto Dart Lane and front onto the private drive. And the affordable unit that we've got, the quad house, if you like, is great for that because it's quite flexible. It gives you essentially 4 frontages. So you've got fronts to the north and south, and then habitable rooms to the east and west as well. So it's quite versatile in that regard. So it's by virtue of the site constraints and also trying to make sure that those, from a management perspective, are congregated together. But I certainly don't feel they're put in that part of the site for any particular reason. The site is a good site, so it's by virtue of the private drive arrangement, but also trying to front on to Dart Lane from an urban design perspective that unit is there.
Right, okay. What was my other question? I have one more. Oh, just regarding the housing needs assessment. How do you feel you've met the requirements from the housing needs point of view?
In terms of the
types of properties that you build.
So obviously from phase 1, we've got quite a good understanding of the local market in terms of the demand that's been well, the sales rate, should I say, on those, and those units have been well received, if you like. So we've tried to follow that. We've got 10% 1-beds, we've got 50% 2s and 3s, which is effectively for your first-time buyers, and then we've got 40% 4-beds. Now, within the housing needs assessment, I think it talks about within Calo Parish there's actually a deficit or a below-average provision of 4-bed properties within there. So it's actually meeting various needs across the range, if you like, but also the 4-beds that there's a disproportionate amount of within Calo as identified within the needs assessment. So it's a bit of market analysis, but also trying to provide that broad range over 1 to 4-bed properties. So you've got something for everybody essentially. As I mentioned in the speech, you've got social and affordable rent opportunities for downsizers, families, and also we've got the bungalows as well, which have been really well received on phase 1.
And my last question would really be about, it's highlighted in the report that some of the properties have got like the maximum drag for putting their waste bins out.
So within the, and this is something that we spoke with officers about, in terms of the bin collection points, we had it set within, the SPD talks about 30-metre drag distance and then a 15-metre collection point from the road. Now, having reviewed the consultation responses from your street scene team, we've slightly adjusted that, and I think there's just 3 properties that are marginally over that 30-metre distance to the bin collection point. But I believe that's a condition that is suggested as part of any permission, should that be forthcoming. So it's compliant nigh on those 3 properties, which are just marginally outside of that. But there may be something that we can do to address those 3 properties.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else got any questions? No, right. I'll if you'd like to retake your seat. Thank you. Now we've got the opportunity to ask questions to officers. I've got a question for you, just regarding the 106 contributions. Obviously, that's down as a condition. What protection have we got to make sure this, if we're not happy with the 106 contributions being agreed, that this can come back to committee?
Yes, we have the figures. The figures that are in the document are what we were expecting. We don't have any reason to believe that the developer won't at this stage agree to those. But if they do, if they don't, rather, we would bring this back to committee because obviously that would be a change of circumstances.
Any further questions for officers? No? Right, I'll open the floor up for debate. Well, I'll start the debate then. I'm not convinced by everything in this application. On balance, I think it's a difficult one. I'd like the 106 to be here before us now, so we can make a decision on that at this present time. But obviously, we've not got that, but we have got that in a condition. I'm not overly impressed with the bin drag for people, for residents. I've had complaints about that on other applications. Even at the back of us here on Wingworth, where people have said it's especially on a big bin day when they've got a lot of refuse. It's a long way to pull these bins. So I've got a little bit of a issue with that, and I'm not convinced by the social housing location all being crammed together in that top corner. We've had an explanation for it. I'm not completely convinced by that. I feel like it's just like being tucked away in the corner, out the way. But on balance, I'm struggling to see why we wouldn't accept this application. So I'm in the floor. Go on, Andrew. Over to you.
Just following on from that, I mean, obviously at 8.8, it's identified by officers that there's design shortcomings in this in this scheme. For me, it's probably late in the day now, perhaps, but is there any way we can have a look at that any further based on what you're saying, and also moving forward, you know, if something's unacceptable, and it's unacceptable, we ought to be doing something about it for the longer term. Don't know what your thoughts are, Chair, on that. I don't know if any.
Yeah. Over to you, David. Want to respond to that?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I can understand the questions being raised, and I think, you know, from my perspective, it's important that as officers we set out to you as members of the committee where we've been with an application, and, you know, perhaps where it's not perfect or could be better, you know, we identify that. Because I think, you know, as per the discussion that members have just been having, it is about trying to balance these different elements off. And I do know that the case officers worked hard with the applicant on this in terms of putting issues to them. And I think in terms of how the design review process has worked, you know, I think we've certainly pushed the applicant or pushed back to the applicant in respect to some of those things that they didn't pick up potentially from the design review, and some changes have been made. We haven't got down the full list. I think in respect of the social housing, it is a difficult one, as the applicant referred to, in terms of there are advantages from the registered provider side in respect of having clusters of properties. On larger sites, you certainly would not want, you know, a significant number of houses that are social housing just in one location across the development. I mean, exactly where does the number fit with that? You know, I can't say I've got a definite figure in my head. I suppose this is a major application, but 41 houses. So in terms of the affordable at 9, you know, that sort of our ability to say the significant harm coming from not pepper potting it, you would have the challenge, I think, of an RP coming back and saying, we're not willing to take these houses on. It's not viable to us if you had, you know, those split over 3 or 4 locations. So I think, you know, that's an area where, you know, ideally there might have been a different solution in a layout and design perspective, but what would have been the delivery implications. And I do think the reason for the first report on the agenda is where those delivery implications are perhaps in question. It's a case of considering how harmful is that, where the reality is we need some of these sites to come forward in the sustainable locations. So I would say that we've pushed things quite far and got some changes. And as ever, it's a negotiation whereby, no, we didn't get to the bottom of that list. But I think quite genuinely, the case officer has secured amendments, and considering this application in the round and the other benefits like the additional open space, the biodiversity net gain, and the fact that this is a sustainable location relative to what else might be sort of coming forward elsewhere, that there are significant benefits to this scheme. So I think overall we've taken it as far as we can. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Just to say that I appreciate that, and I'm sure that the officer has done everything that they possibly can. But as I say, just moving forward and with what we've heard today about the likelihood of more applications coming forward, in order to have sustainable things and in order to have things that look good in North East Derbyshire, we need to make sure that we're pushing our boundaries to do that. If we're going to get houses, let's get the best houses we can possibly get in the best locations and the best design, because we want people to stay here once they're here. We don't want that to be a stopping gap for something. We want them to be here. So, but I thank you for your honesty. Thank you.
I think we all sit on this committee and we want to do the best as we can for the residents as well that these developments are going to affect, and we need as much mitigation as possible. Because that is a big concern. Infrastructure is a huge concern for people, and we need to be working down that where we're really getting developers, not just because we're waiting for a 5-year land supply issue, that we're still pushing them, because we need to be doing that, because we can't just let it be developer-led. So I'm going to open the floor up anyway to Councillor Baker.
Personally, I was quite impressed with the amount of public open space that's going to be offered, and the comments. We've got a major employer just at the top of the road there, Kayla Hospital, and if people are buying these properties from and are working at the hospital, and never mind what the housing assessment says, we've got actual market-led evidence that the developer is building them because presumably they want to sell them. They're doing a business, aren't they? And so, provided we've no concerns about the public open space being maintained and looked after properly, that's it seems to be a very beneficial point, the amount that's offered. Because that land is private, it's not got, apart from one footpath down near the little stable there's no public access across that land, but there will be under this scheme. And that'll benefit the community as a whole. Okay, so that's my input. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Peterson.
Do we have any guarantee that they're not going to build? Sorry, am I on now?
Yes.
Do we have any guarantee that they're not going to build more houses on that open space? Because I think the people of Kayla will be really not happy if they do. Sorry. Am I off? Yeah.
So that public open space will also be the area where the biodiversity net gain is delivered, which means that has to be delivered for 30 years. So that's the first thing. Obviously, there's nothing to indicate that that's a thought at the minute. But and like I say, 30 years, it wouldn't be able to be built on for that length of time.
Thank you for clearing that up. David?
Sorry, Chair, yeah. The only other thing to add on to what Alistair said, I mean, obviously, if that is secured as public open space in a Section 106 agreement, it doesn't prevent an application coming forward, but clearly a question from us would be, well, what's happened to the provision under the Section 106 agreement? So we can't ever preempt what would happen in the future, but that would be a hurdle that they would have to overcome somehow.
Thank you. Right, no one wants to contribute to the debate. I'll open it up for a motion. Councillor Rouse.
I'd like to go with officer's recommendation, please.
Okay. We got a second. Oh, everyone wants to second that. Right. Okay. Right, we'll put that to the vote. Thank you. One more. Who's not voted? There's 8 of us. There's somebody who didn't vote.
That's 8 now, I think.
We've got 8 now. Right, okay. Thank you. Thank you, members. Right, we'll move on to item 9, which is in respect of Aghill Hall, Aghill, New Tupton, Chesterfield, and the application number is NED/23/01075/FL and NED/23/01076/LB Tupton. That was a mouthful.
It was.
Right, I'm now going to hand over to the planning officers to give us I think you're doing this one, aren't you, Graham?
Correct,
yeah. To give us a brief explanation.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So the title is up on the screen. So these applications seek consent for the retention of use of the hayloft as a separate unit of accommodation at Haghill Hall, New Tupton. We have a full and listed building consent application being considered today. So late representations have been received and are set out in the summary update report circulated to members. Included in that are comments from both the applicants and the council's conservation officers. Members are asked to consider these retrospective applications relating to the conversion of part of a Grade 2 listed building into a separate dwelling. Officers have identified harm arising from the loss of historic fabric, alterations to the historic layout of the building, and the introduction of domestic features that detract from its significance. Now, whilst the proposal would add a dwelling to the housing stock of North East Derbyshire, officers consider that the benefit is limited and attach substantial weight to the statutory duty to preserve the listed building and the NPPF requirement to give great weight to their conservation. The planning and heritage balance therefore centres on whether the public benefits of the proposal outweigh the identified heritage harm, and officers conclude that they do not and recommend refusal of both applications. So this slide illustrates the site shaded orange. We've got Tupton and the railway to the west, and the site is set in a countryside location. So there's a bit more zoomed in view of the site. So you can see Haghill Hall is within the shaded orange part. The site is set within a historic farmstead with adjacent historic barns to the north, now converted to residential properties. And we've got former agricultural buildings sitting to the east. So this is the location plan submitted with the application. Access taken from Haghill Lane, or Haghill to the northwest. And you can see the hayloft, it's hatched red within the plan. So this is the site layout of the proposal. The structure is understood to formerly have been a pantry, buttery at lower ground level with agricultural hay store at upper level. A simple utilitarian element to the main building, it is now known as the hayloft and is in use as a self-contained dwelling. It is understood that this part of the building has been used as a self-contained dwelling since approximately 2021. And because of the works carried out internally and externally to convert to a dwelling, the historic uses as a pantry, buttery and agricultural store are no longer recognisable, and historic fabric and features have been lost or altered. It is in these works that the harm lies. So this is a slide of the internal floor plan showing over 3 levels. It should be noted that this would have formerly been a single space area as a working pantry. The degree of subdivision is clear to see on the left hand side of that plan. A new first floor level has also been added, which is understood to formerly have been a single volume space, although at one time may have had a loft area for agricultural or hay storage. And that concludes the presentation, Chair.
Thank you for that, Graham. Right, we've got one speaker on this, which is the agent and the trolley. If you'd like to come to the speakers table, please. And you'll have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Before I start on my speech, could I just correct one thing that the planning officer said? It's actually been used as a separate dwelling since 2014, not 2021.
Okay, we'll address that later on in the debate. Thank you.
Right. The Hayloft is the northeast wing of Haghill Hall, a listed building sited between Tupton and Grassmoor. The main section of the house is used as a holiday let, whilst the Hayloft is used as a small dwelling let for longer periods. The letting out of the property has benefits for the owners in providing a steady income, nearly £1,000 a month, to help finance the maintenance of the hall. It has been let out as a separate unit for nearly 12 years. The entire property is expensive to maintain, and given the current economic situation, the letting of the main hall is less reliable than it once was. The dwelling is small, but it is a good quality space, and the tenants benefit from being able to use the garden space and swimming pool attached to the main hall. It has no disabled access, but to install this would require significant major alterations to the building, which would detract from its historic significance. A number of alterations have been made to the building to enable this use as a dwelling. When my original client, who unfortunately has died since the application was submitted, bought the building in 2001, it was in an extremely poor state. He had site meetings with conservation officers at the time, but unfortunately no written record was made of these meetings. This was not then an unusual way of working, and he had won awards for similar projects previously elsewhere. The works involved stabilising the building and the removal of years of inappropriate repairs. The works were intended to preserve and conserve the building for posterity by retaining original fabric or replacing inappropriate materials with designer materials to match the original. The committee report lists a number of unauthorised alterations to the building. It is accepted that some of these have not received a formal consent, but others were included in listed building consents granted in 2010 and 2012. Examples of these are the roof light, the windows in the lower floors of the gable, and the 2012 consent included the replacement of all external doors and the replacement of all window frames. My client was adamant that only previously blocked windows were reopened where there was such evidence. For the maintenance of a building to be ensured, it must have a viable use. The majority of the works carried out by my former client halted the deterioration of the building, removed many inappropriate alterations, and enabled it to be used for an appropriate purpose. The elements of the conversion that did not have listed building consent constitute less than significant harm and do not affect the historic significance of the house in any material way.
Thank you. And do members have any questions for the speaker? No? Right. You can retake your seat. Thank you. Do members have any questions for officers? Councillor Rouse.
It's just a quick one. Obviously, Linda said that it had been used since 2014. Were we aware of that, or was that just something that we wasn't told?
So yeah, thanks. I've just been looking through the application. So the application form says that the work was completed on the 16th of September 2015. So the information that I've been provided was that it was 2021. So I think I'll revert to what the application form says, and
Yeah, that's what I thought
when
you would.
the use,
That's why I just asked for the...
use commenced.
Yeah, and I think we should just use what you've got.
Graham, does that have any effect on what we've got before us here? The fact that it's obviously previous.
No, thanks, Chair. So I think whether or not the use has been for a period of time is up for debate, and obviously that, you know, Linda's got a different date in mind to what officers have got on the file, but the burden of proof is upon the applicant at what point when the lawful use has accrued. But it's also worth noting that the works that they've done is dependent on illegal works that can never be gained lawful rights without consent. So I'm not sure that we could issue like a lawful development certificate for the use, so it means that we're still able to make a decision today.
So my specific was, does this differential in time scale, does that make it, we can still decide on the application as written in the report?
Yes, Chair, is the short answer. And
Right, good.
the only one thing I would say in addition to that is works to a listed building are not time limited. In the same way as conversion of unlisted buildings, there are enforcement timescales, but they don't apply to listed buildings.
Thank you for clarifying that, David. Any other members got a question? Councillor Peterson?
Got it, okay. Do we have any information as to whether they applied for consent to do any of this stuff? Because that surely, as a listed building, if you buy a listed building, you know you've got to have permission, don't you? I mean, it's part of the listed building thing. So I don't understand why.
That's correct. So yeah, the history that I've got before me is laid out in the officer report. That's what I'm aware of.
Councillor Baker?
The approved drawing from 2014 and the 2015 permission shows the external staircase, but the ground floor is a store. It shows a bathroom or something at another story, but there's no link to the property, so it can't have been a dwelling then when that was approved.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Baker. Yeah, that would be our understanding. That would be my understanding today.
Thank you.
Any further questions for officers? Right, I'll open the floor for debate. Councillor Round. Just tell you.
Yeah, it has now. Look, I'd like to go for the officer recommendation. Chair, please, if there's anyone else to second.
I'm happy to second that for the chair, to be honest. I think there's been extensive alterations to this property that haven't had the benefit of the correct procedures to go about doing that, and I don't think we've got any alternative other than to go with officer recommendation. How this building will all be possibly restored to the fabric it originally was, and it was originally protected to be, I don't know what that'll be for conversations post this application today. So, yep, happy to second that. So I'll put that to the vote. Thank you, members. We have a full house today. That's been rejected. Thank you. Right, we now move on to item 10, which is planning appeals. Who's taking this report? Right, okay, over to you, Graham, to give us this report.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So we've had 4 appeals lodged in the intervening period since last committee. So that we've had one at extensions at a garage over at Ricknold at Old Brampton. So that was disproportionate additions in the Greenbelt. We've got a outline for demolition of existing equestrian buildings and replacement with a new dwelling. That's at Cowley Lane at Dronfield. So that resulted in refuse for Greenbelt harm and landscape harm reasons. We've got a scheme of a household extension at Temperance Hill. So the volume resulted in a change in the character and appearance of the dwelling, and that's in a countryside location. And the final one is a prior approval application for a change of use of Agri Barn to a dwelling up at Stonehenge, Ashover. So we had concerns that it wasn't in agriculture and the cumulative changes were beyond what were allowed in a Class Q conversion. So we'll probably be reporting back on those in due course, hopefully with success. So in the intervening period, so no appeals have been allowed. We've also had 3 appeals dismissed. So one at Stubley Hollow at Dronfield, where the inspector accepted that it was previously developed land, but it failed the test due to its size, bulk and visibility, and associated residential activity would result in a loss of openness and result in inappropriate development. The second is a log store at Acacia Drive at Lower Pilsley. The inspector found that it would have a negative effect on the character of the appearance of the street scene and be a stark, incongruous and out of keeping addition to the street. So that's now with our enforcement team, that case. The final matter is an extension, quite a modern extension at Southgate, Eckington. So this was a modern flat roof design. And again, the inspector found that it would appear incongruous to the traditions of the conservation area and that the less than substantial harm that would arise in the conservation area, the benefit, there was no public benefits to outweigh that harm. So they were all 3 good results for officers. You know, Ken, Curtis and Kerry. Kerry who's on maternity leave at the moment, so I'm sure she'll be listening in. Maybe to hear it reported. So yeah, some good results, and we continue with good results. Yeah, so it just shows that, you know, the officers are making some strong decisions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are we happy to note that report? Just before we leave, I'd just like to hand over to David regarding the solar farm at Morton, just for an update on that.
Yeah, thanks.
Obviously, we decided that at committee.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, because this does relate to an appeal decision as well. So members will be aware that the fairly large solar farm at Morton, the appeal was dismissed. So planning permission refused. The applicant is pursuing a judicial review. So for any planning decision, and that includes decisions by the council or by the planning inspectorate at appeal, there's a 6-week window whereby an applicant can, or an appellant in this case, can apply for a judicial review, and they have done so. So the main party in terms of the defendant of that judicial review if it gets heard, because the first stage is the courts have to decide whether the grounds are suitable, essentially. And if they allow that case to be heard, the main defendant is now the planning inspectorate, because they made the decision dismissing the appeal. The council is a party to that, in that obviously we originally refused the planning application. So it's really just an update to say, probably one for a further update in the future when we know whether the JR has actually been, the judicial review has actually been granted a hearing, and then obviously how that plays out. So happy to provide a further update, Chair.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be good to update members on that. Okay, right, I've got no urgent business, so I'll call the meeting to a close. Thank you.